Hi, everyone, and welcome to Transformation Talks. My name is Ebba Weiberg, and for the past couple of months, I've had the pleasure of bringing together the next edition of the Chief Transformation Officer Exchange, which this time is going to take place in Charlotte in September. And with me today, I have two amazing leaders from the space who are both going to be taking the stage this September. We've got Anastasia Minor, who's the Chief Transformation Officer at Entergy, and we've got Christa McKee, who's the Chief Transformation Officer for Veolia North America. And for the next half hour, we're going to dig into everything from the rising role of the Chief Transformation Officers, how cybersecurity is acting as a catalyst for change, to transformation maturity models. And like I say, I'm delighted to have you both here with me. And I want to start by acknowledging that you both are Chief Transformation Officers, which is one of the fastest emerging executive roles. And arguably, if I may say so myself, but probably the most important one for the enterprise in these fast-moving times. And what I find fascinating is that despite you both having the same job title, but you've come into the roles quite differently. You've got very different journeys. If I'm not mistaken, Anastasia, you come from finance. Christa, you come from IT. So I want to kick off by having you both tell me a little bit about yourselves. So Anastasia, if you want to go first, tell us, how did you come to be where you are today?
Sure, yes. As you mentioned, I have spent a significant portion of my career in financial related roles. I'd say probably about 60 to 70% of my time has been that, both in two different utilities that I have worked for, as well as I worked in commercial and investment banking early on in my career. And in those roles, outside of the finance experience, I also have had the opportunity to have strategy, sales and marketing, operations experience. So really, in addition to the finance roles, I've had a breadth of other experience that kind of rounded out my background to take on this kind of a role. And at Entergy, where I am today, this broad business experience lays a really nice foundation with what we're trying to accomplish with our transformation. I've been CTO at Entergy since we kicked it off about 3 years ago. And this is, Entergy is driving its transformation in all of its utilities. We have 5 utilities across 4 states in the Gulf South. And we're taking an enterprise approach to our transformation, which is focused in 3 areas: employee experience, key operational metrics, and financial improvement. So that would be both in growth and affordability for our customers. So I'll leave it at that.
So you really are a bridge between all of the different functions and tying the entire enterprise together.
That's right.
What about you, Christa?
Yeah, so I've had a bit of a winding road as well. I actually started my career on the front lines of a commercial insurance call center, so very different. But I got the opportunity to move internally into IT operations and support work pretty quickly. From there, then I spent a number of years in like IT program delivery, continuous improvement roles, large-scale transformation initiatives, before a chief transformation officer was really a thing. In our world today. And so what that did was it gave me a lot of opportunity to really learn how the work gets done, as opposed to planned or just discussed. So what I found across all of those different roles was that typically our biggest challenges weren't technical challenges. They were actually around alignment, prioritization, and visibility. And so over time that just pulled me closer and closer to true transformation. So less about delivering technology and more about how the technology aligns, or in some cases doesn't, with how the organization actually operates. So today at Veolia North America, I lead our transformation and continuous improvement organization. We are focused on connecting our strategy to the execution and to value. And I actually love Anastasia talking about their transformation focus, because it actually aligns very directly with ours as well. And ours is also three-pronged. We know the first is around people and culture enablement. The second is around delivery enablement of large-scale digital transformation. And then the third is what we call business enablement, but that is where the financial, the auditing, those kinds of things sit. So, really the focus overall, though, is making sure that things are scalable and repeatable. So that's been the focus.
Amazing. No, thank you so much, both of you. And it's clear that you're both going to be very instrumental in your enterprises over the next couple of years as it continues to scale. It becomes increasingly complex, and clearly that all these different pillars are working together, be it people, processes, technologies, and we'll be diving a little bit into this a bit further on, but obviously tech failure can be a big cause for transformation, and it's important that you get the right processes in place. But I guess before you get the right processes in place, you need the right people in place. So if we go back to the role of the Chief Transformation Officer today, what is it that the enterprise really demands of you and the role more in general? And what do you have to deliver to be a great transformation leader today?
Yeah, I'll take that one first. So as I think about transformation, the transformation officer's role and responsibility is to focus enterprise-wide versus a discipline focus of other key leaders in the organization. And it's important that though, each discipline runs their discipline effectively and with expertise. But my role is really much more on how are we focused enterprise-wide, and do we continue to make decisions that are important on an enterprise basis versus something that optimizes the individual function. So I'm sort of that coach, if you will, that helps the organization think that way. And when I think specifically for Entergy and what we need today, there are really two things, as I thought about coming for this discussion that were really important. First and foremost, the culture, which we've talked about. I mean, the people are so important. And that is really, the people are transforming, not things. Certainly processes change, but we have to actually transform their people and the mindset and the way that our behaviors on how we take action. So the transformation is culture is a very important thing for me to help influence in the organization. And the other big lever for me is my own personal resilience. And really why I say that is because to keep the momentum in the organization in the face of resistance, you have to remember people have been, working in the organization for a very long time and have been successful in their functions. And now we're saying, hey, we need to pivot. We need to work in a new way. And why is that? I've been successful so far in my career. Why do I have to do this now? So I think it's continuing to have the stamina to stay at it, be consistent, talk about the strategic future, why we need to pivot, why we need to work differently. And in our focus is, historically utilities have had more of a siloed approach. And in the future, we need to break down those silos. We need to work more cross-functionally in the organization to create more value. We're already doing some of that today. And so it is actually proving some success, which is helping us with the momentum we're driving, but we need to continue to do more, and with a focus on transparency across the organization, and then also accountability. So if we're transparent about what we're seeing, we can also hold each other accountable. And I really, I go back to that personal resilience for me as a leader, to be the Chief Transformation Officer, to stick with it and continue to push and ensure that we're keeping our momentum and moving forward. Those are my two big things, the culture and the resilience.
I love that you mentioned resilience. I mean, someone said that transformation leaders, you have to be incredibly bold because you're going where no one's gone before. And the chances are that things
Right.
don't always go to plan. So how do you handle that?
Yeah.
And I don't know if you would agree, Christa, that resiliency is one of the top things that you have to deal with on a daily basis.
Yeah, I would absolutely. And I think that Anastasia and I are both in an industry that, like she said, is very established. I mean, Veolia as a global company, we are 175 years old. We were, established under Napoleon Bonaparte. So, we know a little bit about his history and legacy. And it's actually, it's not because of our French origins that I say this, but I think that the role of, the CTrO, so to speak, it really is about translation. Because most organizations are not struggling because they lack ideas. I would, dare to say that it would be next to none. Our people have amazing ideas from small to enterprise, transformation level, but organizations struggle because their strategy and their ideas, it doesn't connect to that execution. And Anastasia talked about building momentum, and it's exactly the same. So, a chief transformation officer sits in that gap. Between, okay, we have the idea and how do we get this to execute across the enterprise? Because we're constantly needing to align priorities across silos, creating that visibility where there wasn't any before, and building mechanisms that allow the organization to move faster. And I think this is a really critical piece, is without losing control. Because you're constantly balancing two things that are usually in tension. And so on one side, you need to drive urgency and momentum. And then on the other side, you need to build structure, governance, and repeatability. And, if you try to only push speed, you create chaos. And if you only build structure, you slow everything down, people see you as a roadblock, and they're going to do what they want to do anyway. And so, the job is really to design that system where both can exist at the same time, and where the organization doesn't feel like they have to choose between them, and that you're always articulating the value of what the change is and what's happening, to the customers. Yes. To our bottom line, sure. But really to the individual people that are having to execute, what these systems and changes are. You have to make the story matter for them. And so, for a chief transformation officer, I'd say that translation into storytelling.
Yeah, and then I mean, I think that's great, and also, and Christa, I know this is something you're facing in large organizations too, with the starting point of different functional organizations is also different. So not only to do all that, but it can be a little bit different for each functional organization. You have these micro cultures too, and even different places, if you will, on where their current capabilities are on continuous improvement or transformation. And so kind of have to meet everyone where they are too, which does also make it a bit complex in larger organizations, for sure.
That's so true, because too, the organization doesn't stay static. Right. There's always changes in people and leaders. For us, a big thing right now is changes due to acquisition. And so, those are exciting changes, but it means that, you're constantly, refreshing the footprint, and what we're putting in place needs to be adaptable to that. So yes, I completely agree with that.
I mean, I feel like we've started to create a really good list here of what the leader actually have to be. I mean, at the top of the list, you have to be a coach. You need to be focusing on people. You have to build your own personal resilience. And then you both talked about the silos and how it's not just about breaking them down, but you also have to align and really communicate the value across many different entities that speak very different languages. So there the translation piece comes in. And then I love the thing that was said about how it's essentially two parts to the role. It's the urgency and momentum, and it's the structure and repeatability, which is pretty much a perfect bridge, because we're going to pretty much be talking about this next, because one of you had an enormous catalyst that happened that set off your entire transformation movement. And we got an enormous maturity transformation model that's in the work to create that structure. So, I mean, I want to get you first, Christa, to share, because it's a very obvious catalyst, but tell us what happened 2 years ago that really sparked the change that's happening in your organization today.
Yes, so it was very obvious, because yes, we went through a pretty serious cyber attack a couple of years ago. And that's something that you never want to happen. And you always want to be prepared for, right? But it's a sobering look in the mirror, regardless of of how it happens. And so, like most companies, and our first response was all around containment and recovery. But pretty quickly, once we backed out of the feeling of fear, of uncertainty, we started to look at, okay, what created the conditions that allowed this attack to happen. And the attack didn't create the issues, but it made them impossible to ignore. And so we were seeing in living color where things weren't connected, where we couldn't see, where we had really no transparency and visibility, and then particularly where standards weren't consistent. And there's a level of autonomy that organizations need to have. In North America, we have a lot of different business units, going where there is uniqueness, between like our municipal water business as opposed to our hazardous waste business. But there are these things that need to be standardized and connected across them. And it's figuring out what really are those things. And so what we found was that the moment of the crisis, and we still call it in all caps, the crisis, even 2 years later. But what that moment really gave us was permission to move faster, to rethink decisions that had been foregone conclusions before, and to align in ways that might have taken us years. And so that actually was our starting point for a broader enterprise transformation effort. That became not just about where the attack happened and containing in that one specific place, but how can we take this transformation as a whole organization. And so I'm not going to give away the full story, because I'll be sharing more in Charlotte. But the short version is that the crisis created a window for us, and that window and the view that we had through that window, it was unifying. Whether you were the CFO or the CEO of one of our businesses, or the digital leader, right? And then what you do as you look through that window, it defines whether you just recover or whether you actually transform. And so, for us, while you never want your organization to go through that, you hear the saying, "Don't waste a good crisis." And I will say, for us, this one led to transformation becoming not just a buzzword, but actually a discipline.
Yeah,
It's amazing.
I was going to just add in there that although you had this crisis, it was like with all change, a burning platform that folks could relate to. Mm-hmm. That's a great, horrible that the situation happened, but a way to align folks to really say, hey, we have to do something different here. I would say at Entergy, we didn't we talked about how do we help the organization understand what's coming. So we didn't have the crisis yet, but we could have had a crisis. So about 4 years ago, we did a lot of analysis around this and what was changing in our industry. And like most industries, there's been a lot of change, rate of change in how we do things. But at that time, the utility industry is facing unprecedented rates of change through technological innovation, shifting market dynamics, regulatory pressures, and just overall changing in customer expectations. We even had focus on, clean technologies and what this might mean for the future. So that was a significant focus for us to try to help the organization understand what could be possible in the future, how we could work differently, make decisions differently, to participate in this in a different way as an organization, to sort of rise to the challenge of the future and what was there, or to become less relevant, overall. So I think it for listeners, it's important to know that you could approach it different ways, and certainly having a specific, crisis to point to helps people more quickly understand what's needed. But as you go forward, Christa, it's now it's about continuing to focus the organization
Right.
on the future, right? So you're going to have to do it both, right?
Yeah.
So it is hard, and it's the focus of helping people understand that. And there's several tools you can use to accomplish that. But we kind of got into the space in a different way. And it was very helpful because although we had a future that we were expecting to occur 4 years ago, we're actually in a much different place. But had we not done this transformational work, we would not have been ready for what has now unfolded over the last couple of years. So, it's been an amazing journey.
And obviously, at the moment, you're going through another wave of predicting the future, making sure the organization is ready for the next change. So tell us a little bit more about the transformation maturity model. And because obviously you mentioned 4 years back, you didn't expect to be where you are today. I'm going to guess this is one of the key reasons why it's needed today.
Yes. Yeah, we've really had unprecedented growth, but we've also done a lot of work to become more efficient, to make room and space for that growth, and with the consideration of customer affordability all through the path. We are in the midst of launching our next campaign and new aspiration statements that'll take us through 2028. And with that, we've actually created a maturity model that helps the organization understand their level of maturity on transformation capabilities and performance. The model is actually structured with 3 elements that focus on sort of like the structures and the systems that make the organization successful, the culture and leadership that drives capabilities and performance, and then the actual performance outcomes. But we really put this in place because folks were having a hard time understanding how they continued this work of the transformation. There was the feeling in some cases of burnout, and partly because they didn't really understand the journey that much. There were some organizations, folks were doing great work and great projects, but like, do I just keep doing these? Like, when does this end? When do I get to go back and do my regular job? So that was a problem, that was a problem for us. Well, we didn't really want you to go back and do your regular job. We wanted to make a new job, new ways of working. We needed to bed the transformation capabilities into how we work every day. So with that, we created this maturity model to help folks understand what the journey is. It has, 5 levels of performance. So not only is it a from to sort of statement, which that would seem like too big of a leap to get to perfection of a premier utility, which is what we're aiming for. But this actually helps stair-step them along the way. What behaviors do you see in your organization? What systems do you have in place? And it's all documented, and you can assess the organization along the way, and then help them understand, are they in an upward trajectory or a downward trajectory regarding their performance and the maturity level that they're putting in place. And so getting back to what Christa said, it also helps the organization sustain their performance overall. And she was talking about when you have turnover, people, new leaders come in and out, how do you ensure that your system and your organization is stable enough to sustain their performance, even with new people coming in and out of the organization? And what does that mean? So you could do an assessment before and after and see how stable the organization is. But it's just an additional tool to help the organization get clarity on where they are and how they can improve. It's not thought transformation for us. We're just using it as a tool to help folks improve.
I love that you talk about how people can self-assess, around a shared model and a shared language, because we've definitely seen that as well. That putting things in the way where, whether you joined the organization 20 years ago or yesterday, that you do have a shared understanding. Because focusing it around an event, while we talked about our event being the catalyst, there's a lot of people in Veolia in North America today that weren't there, that didn't experience that, right? And so that isn't a touchstone for them. What is a touchstone for them is more like the stories of how this has impacted others like them, and putting things into repeatable models, putting things, into a way that is feels implementable. That it doesn't feel like, okay, we're actually, because Veolia and we have a very strong purpose, and our purpose is ecological transformation, and we're saving the planet, and that's something that can unite us. But if you look at that as where you're trying to get to, it's huge. And it's overwhelming. And so while you want to keep that as a vision, you've got to, in the here and now, look at, how can we take smaller steps that continue to lead us toward our ultimate purpose. So we're seeing the same thing.
No, thank you so much, because it's clear that organizations today, like, you need shared models, you need things that are repeatable, you need to distinguish the chaos from what actually is possible to put in, and like almost translate for every single person that it's going to be affecting. So there's a lot of things at stake and a lot of jobs. And you mentioned, Christa, that you saw an opportunity where you were given permission. Quick question for you both. Are you leaders that ask for permission, or would you say that transformation leaders, they more ask for forgiveness?
I would say it's a little bit of both, and it depends on the situation of, kind of, it's navigating what's in front of you and then determining the course of action based on that.
Yeah, I think it's important to, adjust as we go. And so, maybe you're making an initial bold leap that is, that little bit of asking for forgiveness later, right? But then it's adjusting, because, transformation is not a separate thing. It's not new, actually. It's not a side initiative. It's how the business needs to run.
Right.
And if you both say one thing that you're very excited about now going forward, whether you're going to ask for permission or forgiveness when you implement it, but what do you think the next year holds in store for enterprise transformation?
For me, I think it's going to be how we leverage the opportunities in front of us with artificial intelligence, and how we can change ourselves and embed that into new ways of working in the organization.
Yeah, I would agree. I think with AI, the real-time data that it gives us around both our our information technology as well as our operational technology. It gives us execution with visibility, and that changes the game.
And for anyone that's listening in now and either considering becoming a Chief Transformation Officer themselves, or perhaps they're considering appointing one internally, but what advice would you have to give them?
On my side, I would say whether you are an executive that is appointing the role or someone looking to step into the role, don't do it halfway. But also don't try to own everything. So connect, and that's where your real leverage is.
Yeah. And I would say too that I've met folks who did not have alignment with the CEO or top leaders in the organization, and it made the success of the transformation very difficult. And actually most of those have, failed to get traction in the organization, or may have gotten some early wins, but then everything was sort of back down the road. So I would say that that's like one of the most important things to do at the onset of designing the role, is understanding the alignment with the top, and then how the team is going to work together to make it a success.
I love that. And with that note, I want to thank you both so much for coming on here today and for giving your time. And for anyone that is listening who would like to hear more, make sure to not miss out on them being on stage in Charlotte in September. So please come and join us there. But for now, thank you very much.
It's a pleasure.
Yes, it certainly was. See you all soon.
See you all soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you.